Men of Reddit, when was the last time you've cried and why? Part 2. Last week, when I was reminiscing about my mom, brother, and grandmother, just parked the truck and sat there for about 20 minutes just thinking. Sometimes you can't help but get emotional when you're reminded you won't ever see them again, so all you have is fond memories of them. Man, I know your feelings. I think about my mom and how she didn't deserve cancer. It hurts deep, deep down, and sometimes I just cry and wish it was me who passed. This past Saturday afternoon, while at the movies with my wife, watching Little Woman, I hadn't read the book, and the story touched me. I cry often. I don't believe that compromises my manhood. I believe it enhances my humanity. I cry when I see others hurting. I cry when I witness beauty. I cry when I feel sadness. Sometimes I even cry happy or proud tears. Empathy is what enables us to connect with one another more easily. Empathy for your fellow humans doesn't make you less of a man. Quite the opposite, in fact. November 19th, and some assorted days after. My father lost a battle with melanoma on November 12th at 78. It had gone to his liver and lungs and eventually his brain, and he rapidly went downhill. I am very fortunate that I had a father who never thought he was as good as he really was. Over the past 10 years or so, our relationship progressed into friendship. Sadly, I lived 1,000 miles away from him, but a couple of times a week, we would talk on the phone during my commute home. I got to see him 8 or 9 times after his diagnosis, and he always tried so hard to be up when I was around. At his memorial, November 19th, I met hundreds of people whom he had an effect on. I got to say a few words and shared how glad I was to have that friendship, and how much I will miss it. I barely made it through my 1-minute speech. I miss that old man. Last time I cried was when my daughter was born. I was stoic through the whole process. I was next to my wife coaching her. My daughter pops out, and the moment I heard her voice, it reverberated in my heart. Next thing I knew, I was bawling out of control. Just the other day, I often have these dreams where my dog Snoopy is there. However, he passed away almost 5 years ago, and in my dream, I will recognize this and say to myself, wait, Snoopy died? How is this possible? Then somehow, I can't really explain it that well, but me wanting so bad for him to be alive again overwhelms the logical part of my mind, and I rationalize that he actually didn't die, and it was a miracle. I then have a great time, and I'm able to enjoy playing with my best friend again, and having him come along on my adventures. The thing is that this happens with me when I wake up, and have to come to the sad realization that he has gone again. Like, I enjoy being able to see him again in dreams, but it can be really emotionally overwhelming too. So some days I wake and cry because I miss my best friend. Dude, this. I see my dog everywhere. Sometimes I still check outside thinking she might be about to run at the door, then realize, oh wait. I was at lunch with my friends. I was ordering my food and got a message that Kobe Bryant has died in a helicopter crash. Somehow I maintained my composure and didn't cry there. I went home, put on my number 8 jersey, and cried myself to sleep. He was my idol, the only reason I even liked basketball. And now he's gone. Kobe was the first guy when I was playing that I watched and said, man, I want to be that guy. This one has been incredibly difficult for me. So this is gonna sound dumb, but last Thursday, I couldn't sleep, so I was watching YouTube and a review for Avengers Endgame popped into my feed. While watching that review, I decided to watch audience reactions to the Thor's hammer scene and the snap scene. Seeing and hearing the joy from those scenes made me lose my confidence for some reason. I've done this kind of thing before, especially when I was younger. I'd stay up thinking about what kind of dad my dad would have been and cried my eyes out knowing I'd never find out. My mom would tell me that sometimes. People just need to cry. Guess I just needed to cry. Not dumb at all. Let those tears out. I gave up 8 years of my life to raise my stepson while his mom was a dysfunctional alcoholic and drug addict. Like, drink and drug till she passed out on the floor sometimes, or kick holes in walls kinda. I still smoke weed and drink occasionally, not daily, and I take care of myself. Exercise, eat right. Unfortunately, unless I went to AA, she wouldn't be with me. I'm not an addict, but she began to believe that any use of drugs was addictive behavior. I refused to go to AA, but said I would stop smoking and drinking if that is what she wanted. Didn't sell. She won't let me see the kid now. I miss my son. I miss him every day. I drove home last Saturday and heard a song come on Spotify we used to sing to. Would always make him smile when it came on. I miss his smile. I miss him right now. He is my world, and she won't let me even talk to him. Don't know what to do without him. Just now, Dad literally passed this morning about 4 hours from the time of this post. Of course, when I get back home from meeting with my sister and my mom at the nursing home to browse Reddit for my first chance at any distraction, this is on the front page. He had early onset Alzheimer's. He was only 67. We finally had to put him in a nursing home 3 years ago because my mom and I couldn't manage to care for him at home anymore. He had basically been in a near vegetative state of limited alertness and nonverbal for the last 2.5-ish years, so his passing wasn't unexpected, and we had a lot of time to mentally prepare since his diagnosis nearly a decade ago. But man, when it finally happens, it still blows. Man, I lived the same story as you, except it was my mom. Diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in '96 when she was in her mid-50s, passed 10 years later in '06 to cancer. Because, well, it's never the disease that gets them, just weakens their body and mind to the point something else does. My dad and I were the caregivers most of the way, until we finally had to get outside help. It's a hellish, torturous nightmare of a journey for them. And then for the family. I'm still scared to this day, and probably will be for the rest of my life. Things do get better, though. I'm sure you've gained a unique and, hopefully, better perspective on life than most. Know that your dad isn't suffering anymore, and that you and your family can begin to heal. Treasure the times you have with your mom, and keep the good memories of your dad close. Best wishes. Middle of summer 2019, my mom and dad came into the room while my mom is holding a teddy bear. She says, "I have bad news and worse news. Which do you want to hear first?" I said bad news, and she told me that they're both going to be deployed at the same time. The worst news was I'm moving in the summer of 2020. I cried so much I'm still unable to cry, and still unable to support the military that does nothing for us within the past 4 years. My dad was in the military until I turned 10 or 11. We only had to move twice, thankfully, but he was deployed 3 times over his 11+ years of service. When I was 12, my parents started fighting a lot and abusing pills and such, and now they're drug-fueled shells of what they used to be. Tomorrow, I'll be 2 months from turning 19, and I haven't hugged my mom since May of last year. She's still pretty bad on meth, I think. I don't even know. She could overdose and I'd have no way of finding out. My situation is very different from yours, but you feel alone and I do too. I'm still struggling pretty bad, but what helps me keep going each and every day is that I only thought I was alone. The people that took me in when I was 17 had zero relation to me when my dad kicked me out. I moved in with my girlfriend when I turned 18, and I regret not building a relationship more with that family every day. DM me if you ever need somebody anonymous to talk to. I remember it being weird to say dad every time he came back. Lots of love from Ohio, buddy. Classmate died yesterday. She was a horn player in my orchestra. Girlfriend broke up with me out of the blue hours after. She said she wanted to talk, and I said hopefully nothing serious, and then I got completely destroyed. I ugly cried in front of all of my friends, and they brought me tea and blankets and snacks. Lucky to have them. Yesterday, I was happy, with many happy days just on the horizon. Today, I'm lost. I am in denial, but I will have to learn to accept it and move on. I'm scared of moving on. This was nowhere on my list of possibilities that could happen to me. No warning signs, we never fought, and then it was just over, because her feelings changed. Hey, I'm going through something similar. Female here. My boyfriend and I broke a week ago. It was mutual. We knew we were both in tough places. Him with his personal issues I won't go into, and me, that I'd been stressing about why our relationship looked more like casual friends than a couple. Then, that stress coupled with final stress, and I started having panic attacks. It sucked so hard. I couldn't help but think that it was my fault, that I started to feel insecure about our relationship, and that it led to our demise. I allowed myself to cry. I felt like all I could do for 2 days was cry. We broke up over text, and I managed to keep it together until I got to a secluded bathroom and cried for 20 minutes. And random bursts throughout the day. Same thing the following day. In the meanwhile, I was trying to study for an exam, but I wasn't performing well, and I started having panic attacks about it too. I feel a little better now, and I'm going to take this single time to reflect and work on myself as a partner in person. Take your time and think whether you've been nice to yourself recently. Have you taken care of yourself? Really taken care of yourself? I found during this week that although sad about my loss, I have great friends and parents that are willing to guide me through what feels like an upcoming nervous breakdown. Please take care of yourself and don't dwell too much on it. Don't be afraid to rely on people you trust. Vent to the internet. I suggest writing your feelings out. I also read around on some types of therapies on NHS sites. Sometimes they give useful resources to deal with these situations. Like a DIY therapy, in a way? Some people will also recommend breathing exercises or meditation. For me, what seems to be working is writing it out. Don't hold the tears more than you need to. If you like drinking or doing drugs, please try to avoid it around this time. It's really, really dangerous. On my drive home from work yesterday, thinking about everyone who I thought cared but tossed me aside like mere trash, I've always been a little slow when it comes to learning things and retaining information. Never quite good at making friends, so I held on to a few I thought were good friends, up until recently. It was horrible in school, studying my butt off in order to at least get C's on tests. Since graduating high school, I've always worked hard for my money, landscaping for a few years, and now I'm an electrician's apprentice. My attendance every day is impeccable. I do the best I can every day, even though coworkers can be cruel, saying I should be able to do certain things by now, and I try and text my few friends at least once a week to check on them and ask them about their weeks, and usually I only get left on read. All in all, I know it's not the greatest reason to be upset, but it sure does get lonely outside of work and frustrating at work. I'm sure many of you can sympathize. A few weeks ago, I got a phone call from my mom. She told me that one of my older sisters had a brain aneurysm and that she's in a medically induced coma in a hospital 2 states away, and the doctors didn't think she was going to make it. At first, I didn't know how to feel about it. I haven't seen her in years. She started popping pills, told all of us to get lost, and disappeared. A week after, my mom told me, her and my 2 other older sisters went to go see my sister in the hospital. While they were there, the doctors tried to wake her up, but anytime they did, she'd either have a seizure or a stroke. At that point, the doctors really didn't think she was going to make it, and began talking about how long my mom wanted to keep her on life support. It wasn't until they sent me a picture of my sister that it all hit me. I was at work, and I stopped what I was doing, walked into a closet, rested against the wall, and cried. This past week, one of her caretakers told my mom that they had taken her off the drugs that kept her in a coma, and that it was up to her to wake up. Yesterday, the same caretaker sent my mom a photo of my sister with both eyes open looking at the camera. When I saw the picture, I cried again. Last year in July, best friend killed himself and left behind a newborn and a wife who's also a good friend of mine. I cried when he died, and a few weeks after that when I had to help his wife understand that his death wasn't an accident. She had been postponing his funeral to have a medical examiner look over his body again.